and gentlemen, welcome to the Nutrition Hero Podcast. Igniting both the art and the science of functional medicine. Here's your host, Dr. Brad Watts.
Hello, Nutrition Hero family. Welcome to the Nutrition Hero Podcast. I'm Dr. Brad Watts, sitting here in the podcast lab on a snowy morning here in November, and happy to be here. So anyway, thank you for participating in Nutrition Hero as always. We appreciate your thumbs up, 5-star reviews, your likes. We appreciate you guys coming along for the journey. So as always, bringing content to you that you're not going to find anywhere else, and I gotta tell you, nowhere is that true more than today. Today I have a special guest, somebody that I appreciate him coming on the podcast and just dripping some knowledge on us. I appreciate that. So today we have none other than Dr. Greg Peterson. Dr. Greg Peterson is a doctor of chiropractic. He's an expert in clinical nutrition, functional medicine, whatever you want to call it. But the gentleman has been practicing for decades. It's hard to overstate the impact that this guy's had on the industry, and I should say this, my ability to practice as well in one form or another. And so it was pretty interesting, the conversation that I recorded here about a month ago, and I want to dip into it now and let you get a taste for what the guy has done, what he is doing, and what that means for functional medicine as we move forward. If you are practicing functional medicine in the United States today, I'm telling you, check out Health Kaizen, which is what he's going to talk about today. Check it out. There's a good chance that if you're practicing in the U.S. today, that how you practice and how you think about health, clinical nutrition, functional medicine, has come out of this guy's experience. And so he's been an educator in the space for, 30 years? And so I'm excited to introduce to you Dr. Greg Peterson. Check it out. Welcome, Dr. Peterson, Greg, as I know you're going to make me call you, to the Nutrition Hero Podcast. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Thank you, but sir is my dad's name. I'm still an enlisted man working, so I appreciate the respect, Brad. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, hey, I took an oath when I was graduating school. You got to respect these old guys. You know that, right?
I do remember that, even though it's been a few, but, you look at the way society has gone now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay for kids to call adults by their first name.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how this goes, though. Okay.
All right.
But anyway, thank you for being here. I appreciate you spending time with us, and I'm excited for my audience because, man, the amount of sheer experience and knowledge and care and impact that has come out of you and your career, it's not something that I take lightly, and I want you to know that. And it's not something that I think the entire community, natural healthcare community, should take lightly. So I'm excited that you're here. And
appreciate that.
First thing I want to ask you about today is your transition from traditional chiropractor into something that is more along the lines of what I would consider functional medicine, clinical nutrition provider, educator extraordinaire. Where do we start?
Brad, back in the 70s, when I went to college, I was a pre-med chem major. I was one of those really demented individuals that loved chemistry, and I transferred to the U of M my junior year as a chemical engineer. But what happened was that was the time when the oil embargo, for those of us that remember the mid to late 70s, and they weren't placing chemical engineers. And I had the good fortune to meet a chiropractor that was, early stages of functional medicine. And he introduced me to, the concepts, and took me another year or so before I entered chiropractic school, and, have never looked back since.
So how long were you practicing as a traditional chiropractor, or have you been in clinical nutrition the entire time?
I would say about 6 years where it was traditional. I mean, I got into the philosophy with the subluxation-based chiropractic, but that wasn't for me.
Uh-huh.
My draw was always back to the chemistry. Dede, the founder of chiropractic, said there were three causes of subluxation: thoughts, trauma, and toxins. Well,
Mm.
to me, toxins were part of nutritional deficiencies or the buildup of toxins in the body. So in the early 90s, I started dabbling in nutrition. And when I moved back to Minnesota, in 1996, I said, that's it. So
Mm-hmm.
this is when the HMOs were big and you had to be signed up with care providers. And being back to Minnesota, I didn't have that opportunity. And so I started down the road of functional medicine
Mm.
back then.
And with a specific, strategy, when you talk about MCP, or I call it mechanical, chemical, psychological, the subluxation complex, right?
Hmm.
But when you look at having intervention for people from a chemical perspective and all that that entails, one of the things that I get so excited about is that it's an area of natural health care that there hasn't been a lot of research on at that point, in my opinion, in the 90s, 80s, and 90s. And here we are sitting in 2020, doctor, where the research is starting to pile up and it's starting to create a foundation of action for the next generation of chiropractors, natural health care providers, medical doctors, even. And I'm excited because that's what you're actually doing right now. You've transitioned from solely focusing on, your patients to helping everybody else focus on their patients as well. And I'm talking about health Kaizen, and I'm going to ask you about that next. What is health Kaizen and what are you doing with it?
What health Kaizen is, Brad, is Kaizen is a Japanese word that means the continuous improvement through steady, slow steps in efficiency and quality. And
Mm.
isn't that what really healthcare is all about? I mean, unfortunately,
Yes.
people come to us as healthcare providers and they want it yesterday and they don't want to pay for it.
Right.
And so what Kaizen came about, Brad, was not only my own clinical experience, where I had to explain to patients back in a time when they didn't understand. I mean, now I'm going to pick on the microbiome. Take
Right.
a look at the microbiome. There's millions of articles on it. But back when I first was introduced to it, back in about 1993, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bernard Jensen. And Brad, I'm going to pick
Mm.
on you. You
Mm-hmm.
might be too young to remember that name, but he was a naturopath and a chiropractor from California
Mm.
that actually had a healing ranch. And he had written a book called Empty Harvest, along with another one of my original mentors, Mark Anderson, called Empty Harvest. This was written in the early 90s.
Wow.
And they were on a book signing tour. And at that point, I was in my early 30s. I knew so much then. Now I realize in my 60s, I really don't know much at all. But he said to me, Brad, he said, Dr. Peterson, always remember, always start with the bowel. And, I thought, that's pretty anal, but, I mean,
Yeah.
and now you look back and you mentioned, the psychological and the emotional tie into health. And there, I've been so blessed in my career to have had mentors that taught me that, and my own training in acupuncture
Mm-hmm.
in the mid 80s taught me that emotions were tied into the meridians. Now we look at new German medicine, and we know that certain emotions like anger are tied in with liver issues.
Mm.
And so I've always been one to question, therefore I am, as the quote goes. But, so I always wanted to try to understand the complexity of the body. And the thing of it is, you don't. And that's where Kaizen comes in, Brad. What I'm trying to do through Kaizen is, with my experience of almost 13 years now as a nutritional rep for one of the main nutritional companies that only deals with licensed healthcare practitioners, my
Mm-hmm.
35 years as a clinician, and I really started speaking nationally, about 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I had done a few, small things for various chiropractic homecomings and things like that. But What happened, Brad, was I was so blessed to be able to bring all this together in what Kaizen is. And now, as we were talking about, with basically everybody getting used to, the online, well, I had set out about 2 years ago to set up an online network. I was also planning on live appearances for my mentorship program, which is 2 weekends,
Mm-hmm.
20 hours each weekend, where we go into, the various epigenetic factors, epigenetic being the things that influence the gene. I mean, the research, even the National Institutes of Health and the cancer industry states that 5 to 10% of cancer and 5 to 10% of chronic disease has anything to do with the genes. So it's all the factors, the things that you and I, just mentioned, the emotional, the toxins in the environment, all of the things that we are exposed to are what affect the gene expression. They didn't change the sequence of the gene, but what they did is they changed the way in which that gene is expressed, turning tumor suppressor genes off. What I mean is, there's certain genes that'll suppress a tumor. And the things that are going to influence this are heavy metals, environmental toxins like glyphosate or Roundup, viruses, bacteria, parasites. What they do is they flip the switches off, an epigenetic change, or they flip switches on, like for a pro-oncogene or a tumor growing gene. I mean, you really have to flip about 50 or more of these switches, turning off suppressor genes, turning on cancer genes in order to develop cancer. Well, that's what Kaizen's all about, is looking at this. So not only do I have my 2 weekend mentor program, which is available online,
Mm-hmm.
but also, I've delivered seminars on methylation. This will be available on the website. It'll be an all-day seminar that I did on methylation. There's one on chronic disease that'll be available on the website, but I'm going to also be doing monthly seminars, 1 to 3 hours, that are going to cover various topics like hormones, immune system, looking at hyperreactive immune systems such as autoimmune, or hyporeactive immune systems such as cancers. Now, I want to make it clear, we don't treat cancer. We treat the individual that has cancer. But now we know more and more that cancer is a metabolic disorder. Therefore, if we get the stuff out of the way, the viruses, the bacteria, the heavy metals, we can have a tremendous impact upon, the health outcome of the individual. Now, the thing that I think that makes Kaizen even, more unique is that there's going to be patient lectures. From the time I started practice, I held patient information seminars, originally called, spinal care classes, as all
Right.
chiropractors know about. Well, that kind of morphed into looking at, the functional approach. Well, right now, what I'm doing, Brad, is I'm doing monthly seminars that'll be 30 to 45 minutes for the patient. Some people want deeper.
Yeah.
However, we know the average attention span of an American now is approximately 5 minutes at the most. So there'll also be a number of short little presentations that'll be on there looking at the microbiome, why they need to follow up with their health practitioner, the role that they play as their coach, and helping them to discern what is really at the underlying cause of their illness.
I think that's a huge hole in the marketplace right now. I know so many providers that want to get into nutrition. They want to offer nutrition to their patients. They understand that they're missing a huge component of natural health care by not participating, but they don't know where to begin. They don't have the skill set that you're talking about here to be able to deliver information to their patient base intelligently and communicate effectively. And so I think that this is good on you. This is a huge plug for a hole in the marketplace. I like that. So,
Thank you, Brad, because it
yeah.
is. I mean, who wants to take the hour or two of reading the material, then the hour or so to prepare the PowerPoints,
Right.
and then, to give up family time, to give up other time to actually sit down and do it? Well, that's what I will be able to do for practitioners, and they'll be able to decide whether they want their patients, their clients, to be able to see a certain video,
Hmm.
whether it's about the microbiome, whether it's about the immune system, what they can do. I mean, right now, people believe that they have to social distance and wear a mask for their immune system. What happened to, fresh air and
Yeah.
sunshine and, the things like zinc or vitamin C that'll build up the immune system? Those are the topics that I want to address, Brad,
Mm.
is, help make the work of the practitioner easier, that by educating his patients, because if they don't understand, you and I both know, they look at you with a glazed over look sometimes and going, what?
Right.
Well, here they'll be able to rewatch that video and go back to it. Also, I will have the resources available. I try to read both sides of an argument
Mm-hmm.
before I will state an opinion. So I'll put both the pro and the con, and
That's,
then
that's true. I do have to say that specifically here, that's a skill that most people are unwilling to participate in because they're just researching to back their own narrative. And I'm a, I just wanted to mention this here, like in the work that I've been involved with you in the past, I do have to say you have read both sides to an argument very well,
thank you.
and I think that that's being fair to the science and also fair to the patient. So I think that's a cool part of what you're talking about here.
Thank you, Brad. And I think it's vitally important, that, with Dr. Google now, everybody
Right.
reads something and they become an expert on a particular topic. But you really have to look at, both sides of the story to try to understand where is the other side coming from? What is
Hmm.
it that, that they're trying to say?
That's right. That's right. The one of the things that I'm wondering about with Health Kaizen is the patient access to these educational videos. Are these distributed by the healthcare provider, or is there like are the patients coming to your website to watch those?
Thank you, Brad. What'll happen is when the doctor pays the monthly subscription fee, the
Hmm.
doctor portal, this is where they'll be able to see those seminars. There'll be seminars also on blood chemistry in addition to what I talked about, and the monthly seminars that'll be ongoing. What'll happen is once the doctor pays that fee, his patients will be given his or her will be given an access code that they'll be able to access the patient videos. I don't mind training my patients,
Hmm.
for no charge, but
Hmm.
when I put all that time into it, so what'll happen is that once the doctor pays the monthly fee, which I think is ridiculously low at $79,
Yeah,
um,
that is
to
ridiculously low.
it is, but
That is.
I'm more
Wow.
interested in getting the information out there, Brad. I'm 65, and I've had a long career that I've enjoyed. I want young practitioners to be able to afford it because they
Hmm.
have to educate their patients. It's so
Mm.
important.
Mm.
And I'll
My
be able to
goodness.
say things that they can't say. I'll be able to
That's
say
true.
things like, you don't get it your way. This isn't Burger King. You've
Right.
got to follow your practitioner's recommendations. Don't tell me you tried natural or
Uh,
holistic healthcare
right.
and you didn't follow the recommendations. You went
Right.
to one of the retail outlets and you bought the cheapest supplement on the line. Well, you and I both know.
Right.
Look, it's not about trying to sell supplements in our practices as a profit center. No,
Hmm.
it's about quality. I mean, when we handle a product, what's on the label is in the bottle, and what's not on the label isn't in the bottle. And what do I mean? I mean things like solvents and heavy metals. And,
Right.
I mean, we have no idea. I mean, when you look at thiamine, for example, thiamine pyrophosphate, thiamine hydrochloride, thiamine mononitrate.
Mm.
Well, really? I mean, our patients, our clients look at it and they think thiamine is thiamine.
Right.
Well, some of it's toxic.
Hmm.
And, it's not going to have the effect that we want for our patients. And that's why, there will be no product sold on Kaizen.
Hmm.
It'll be about why they need to work with their health practitioner,
Hmm.
why it's important that they get the quality supplements that they're offering. Because it's like, we almost feel like, we shouldn't be selling it in the medical arena. They're not supposed to,
Right.
well, really? So it's okay to get a kickback? Oh, I shouldn't say kickback, should I? But it's okay to get a vacation paid for and,
Right.
$10,000 in gifts and all
Right.
of that from the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the highest quality products to our patients, our clients. We're trying to provide the information, and that just is so time consuming that I've been working on this network now for 2.5 years. What it started with is a number of my doctors that I was working with back in Minnesota had pushed me to re-release a weight loss program that I had introduced 10 years ago.
Hmm.
Well, I recorded a lifestyle video. It was about an hour and a half long called Transform. And it was about, incorporating diet and lifestyle into it, not so much focusing on supplements. And I had this group of 5. I call them my focus group. And if they're listening, they know who they are. But after I recorded it, I said, I'm not going to release it. There needs to be ongoing education. Why is it organic important? Why are avoiding food preservatives and additives important? Why is exercise? There was so much more. There were so many questions in my own head that I never released it. And that was in January of 2018. Well, here we are 2.5 years later. And I'm finally telling you and the doctors I've worked with, yes, now it's going to happen in September. So,
That's
you
so
know,
exciting.
it is.
It's so exciting. I mean, as somebody who has been fortunate enough, blessed to treat, thousands of patients and know just to what extent the education component plays in patient outcomes. It is, I mean, it's all, in my opinion, it's invaluable to have that education preloaded and in the cloud, so to speak, like sending the link to the patient and being able to scale your ability to help people. That's the biggest thing I see right now, doctor, is in healthcare, especially with the practices that I work with, that the ability to see patients, I mean, you might see 15 people in a day or 20 people in a day if you're really cranking, but that limits your impact and your ability to scale and help more people effectively with quality care. I mean, how do you say no to that? That's something.
And sometimes we just want to roll our eyes because we hear the same question over and over and
Right.
over, and we don't have that time. Whereas here, what the doctor, the clinician will be able to do is say, here, go watch this video on, why am I doing the functional testing? We'll talk about, functional testing versus the standard medical tests. I mean, you and I
Mhm.
both know, we look at a blood test and, the doctor will say, yep, you're normal.
That's
Well,
right.
let's pick on an ALT and an AST. I mean, liver enzymes.
Sure.
The normal is 0 to 45, or 0 to 55, but all that is 95% of the population. They take
Mhm.
the top 2.5%, the bottom 2.5%, and they throw it out. Well,
Right.
normal of what? The
Right.
sick people that 70% of Americans have a chronic disease.
Right. It's
So
amazing.
it is. So I'm going to try to educate the practitioners on the use of functional testing in their clinic, try to educate the patient on why is the doctor doing this when their traditional physician might say, you know what? It's all normal. I'm going to go back to the liver enzymes.
Mhm.
Doc, I mean, what happens when the ALT and the AST are low? You and I are going to think a possible B6 deficiency,
Right.
because that is a B6 dependent pathway in order to properly detoxify. Is it any wonder that 1 in 2.5 Americans end up with cancer? Well, their
Right.
bodies can't detoxify. It's not a matter of putting them on a detox program. It's about getting their liver working. So we'll talk about those things, and this is where I'm excited to be able to explain this to the patient,
Hmm.
but also to get the doctor to understand by, talking with people like you that'll talk about the blood chemistry. I don't want to do it. I've taught blood chemistry for, a number of years, but, there's so many things out there that are available. And what Kaizen is I want to bring other practitioners in like yourself that can teach, that because people get tired of hearing the same person over and over and over. So Kaizen's about bringing resources in. We're going to talk about what you need to do to run a virtual practice.
Mm.
Here are some software programs you might look at. Here's how you do the charting. Here's how you might follow up, all the way down to functional testing, to looking at methylation, chronic disease, all of those things. So I've tried to cover a wide range of topics.
Well, I think that's awesome in the context of teaching doctors the actual mechanics of it, in addition to the chemistry, in addition to educating the patients. And so often people just get in their own way, providers and patients, and teaching them how to get out of their own way so that people can heal I mean, that's going to be an interesting scenario in the next decade here, as I think most, consulting, or the consultative side of healthcare is going to be online. And I think you're just ahead of it here. I think you're exactly right.
I just happened to be in the right time at the right place. I mean, what happened is, I got tired of the travel with the live seminars.
Yeah.
I just was working on my taxes. I spent 190 days away from home last year.
Wow.
That just gets old. But
Right.
what's happening, Brad, is I'm going to bring my experience as a clinician. I'm going to bring my experience as a sales rep, because what happens is, as clinicians, we say, well, what do you give for?
Right.
And they name a condition. I mean, it's like, no, you can't do that.
That's right.
But, so I want the clinicians to understand. So,
It's
Brad, I
like
just so appreciate your questions.
that right there, what you just said. What do you give for? That's, one of the things I've found is that that's because we passively grow up with the medical viewpoint, and, there's a pill for every ill. And even though people have gone through 5 years, 4 years of, natural healthcare training and a decade of practice, they're still viewing healthcare from that medical viewpoint, that perspective. And there's something about removing those glasses that's freeing, and something about removing those glasses that is so fun to watch, with the impact that it has on your patients.
Well, like you said, it's the emotional, the psychological. I mean, what about their marriage, their family, the toxins that they're exposed to? I mean,
Hmm.
there's so many things that, we have to weigh into. Why does the patient have a disease? Not why is this disease, in everybody. I mean, everybody's got different life experiences.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something a couple of minutes ago about blood chemistry and how the lab ranges were representing 95% of the population, air quotes, normal, right? And in functional medicine, just to expound upon this for people listening here that might be new to the concept, that is representing, in general, 2 standard deviations away from the average, right, for any given lab range. What the doc is mentioning here is that if you use a tighter lab range, we're able to help people identify and address metabolic concerns or otherwise before they become full-blown disease and you're outside of that 95% of the population. Because ultimately, we don't want to know if, Dr. Greg Peterson is healthy compared to the 400-pound guy that got tested after him. We want to know if Dr. Greg Peterson's healthy for Dr. Greg Peterson. right?
And that takes education, Brad, as you
Yeah.
and I know, because we both teach it. The understanding, the interconnectedness of the thyroid, the adrenals, and all of that. Why does that individual have the disease? Not, yeah,
Yeah.
you're spot on with that.
So, in the context of patient care, where do you see natural health care going in the next 10 years?
Education, education, education. I think that's the most important part because, I mean, the biggest thing we hear is, well, I'm paying $800, I'm paying $1,500 a month, and if my insurance isn't going to pay for it, I don't want to pay for it. Well, I've got car insurance.
Hmm.
And if I don't have an accident, my car insurance isn't going to pay for me to maintain and take care of it. And that's kind of where healthcare
Mm,
is at.
gotcha.
That if you have a disease or you need treatment, it kind of feeds the hand that feeds it.
Right.
That being the hospital setting, the pharmaceutical industry, et cetera. And I'm not saying there's not a time or place for either, but where we need to be is we need to have our patients understand they have to take responsibility. And the only way that's going to happen is through education. I mean, what's going to motivate them? Are they going to be motivated by fear of getting a disease? Oh, I don't want Alzheimer's.
Right.
I just read a study that 1 in 3 may have it by the year 2030. Well,
Mm,
we know that 1 in 2.5. Well, when Nixon declared war on cancer in 1971, you had a 1 in 25 chance.
mm.
Well, now we're down to 1 in 2.5. This is why, Brad, people have got to take responsibility, and they can't take responsibility if they don't understand it. And the clinician can't help direct them if he doesn't understand
Right.
what does it mean to look at these ranges as we talked about, as well as some of the other functional testing.
One of the things that you mentioned there is patient responsibility. It I think in the next 10 years, just to add to what you were saying, I think you're going to see the same way that you can look across the United States landscape and see different socioeconomic uh, patterns, right? So you got middle class, upper middle class, the upper class, the lower middle class, all these different classes based off of socioeconomic situations. I think you're going to see that with healthcare coming up. And it's interesting because after the Second World War, when the socioeconomic situation started to expand and the middle class really started to take off, I think you're going to see something of that same nature in regard to people that are willing to handle their own healthcare. And you're going to see that separating into different sections of the population where you're going to have people that are the healthy, the moderately healthy, the people that are enjoying their lifestyle and are sick, and the people that are sick.
You
and
got it.
and I think that's where we're headed. But being able to identify that, I think, is probably near the end of the next 10 years. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with that and see if, if there's a political situation with it as well.
I think people are just going to have to wake up and see it, Brad. I mean, that they hear about, why their processed and ultra processed foods are bad for them. But boy, they feel that if they can put it in their pie hole and chew it and swallow it, it's got to be food, right?
That's right. Oh, goodness. I don't know why, but you make me laugh when you throw those words
And you're
out
not
there.
even looking at me.
No. So, all right. Well, doctor, I have a slide up here, obviously, that has your website on it, has
Thank
your
you.
email address on it, and has what I would call the mission of Health Kaizen on it. And I want to make sure that people take an opportunity to go check this out and to make sure that they get connected with you. So, um, are they allowed to email you if they have questions?
Yes, you've got my email on there, Doc.
Okay.
So feel free to reach out to me. I would love the opportunity to explain in greater detail. The website will, explain some of the details. But if there's still questions, reach out.
All right. Awesome. Dr. Greg Peterson, thank you so much, sir, for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it. So, very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.